Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Whether you stumble across this video by chance or are here because you already know me from HoYoLab, but let me introduce myself first. And I know this video will be far from perfect because it's my first time, so please bear with me. It's not easy, especially in English, but I'll try my best. So, basically, I am an archaeologist specialized in classical antiquity, Greece, Rome, and this kind of stuff, with, let's say, a bit of a nerdy side. I mean, we all are more or less nerds in my field, but I was thinking more of like, D&D, video games, this kind of stuff. So I went on about with my life until one day in January 2022 I stumbled across a certain game that was free, nice looking, a bit of a Zelda-like atmosphere, and it happened to be free. So I thought to myself, why not? Anyway, I will probably delete it in a couple of months. More like a couple of years, but here I am. And I just fell in love. I mean, Genshin Impact, I love everything about it. The music, the characters, the story, the exploration, everything. But after a while, in fact, I began to notice that it actually has a lot, and I mean a lot, of historical references. So of little and less little, as you will see, bits and pieces that I know well, that I recognize, but I began to wonder, will most players recognize these, or are they putting bits that people won't even fully understand? So after a while I thought to myself, why not explain those things? Why don't make a bit of a side hobby out of this? And here's how I started this whole thing. At first it was just post on HoYoLab, and then here I am. That's my first video, guys. So, for this first video, what I wanted to do was talk about something I'm sure many of you have noticed while exploring the sea of bygone eras, but maybe don't really recognize or know much about, and that is the Alta Semita. So those of you who follow me on HoYoLab already have seen a post about this, but trust me, behind this sort of crossing between a harp and a waterway hides a lot of secrets, and if you want to know them, just follow me. So, like many other places in Remuria, the Alta Semita is actually taken from ancient Roman history. And since I just happen to live in the real Eternal City, I thought this time I will lead you through the real thing. Or at least what's left of it, because there's not a lot, but you'll see. Before showing you the actual thing, let me quickly introduce you to what the Alta Semita was. So the name literally means high path, and it was a road that traversed one of the main hills on which Rome was built. So you probably know the legend, Rome was built on 7 hills, and the Quirinale is one of those. It's actually one of the hugest, if not the biggest, probably. And it was the only one that the Latins didn't call Mons like the others, like, I don't know, the Capitolium or the Palatine, but they called it Collis, and we'll see why in a minute. So it is situated in the northeastern section of the city, and the Alta Semita it must have been one of the oldest roads in Rome. Why? Because actually just the word semita, it's a very archaic one, so it's seldom used in classical Latin, and it has to have been taken from an older stage of the tongue. And another puzzling thing is that actually semita was used to refer to sort of a mountain path. So a tortuous one, full of twists and turns, you know, like mountain paths are. And instead, as you will see, that the Alta Semita is actually quite straight. I mean, few Roman roads ran as straight as this one. So why is this? Why? Well, it's probably because it was altered many, many times during the course of Roman and also modern history, but we'll get there in a minute. Being one of the oldest roads around, the Alta Semita was probably already around when the Quirinale wasn't yet a part of Rome, but was instead controlled by another Italian population, the Sabini. At that time, the hill must have been still quite wild and imposing. It was so wild, so unfamiliar to the Romans that it's actually the reason why they didn't call it Mons, but Collis, because it was huge and it was quite foreign for them. And being that imposing and that wild and that foreign, it's highly unlikely that a road that basically was the main communication mean to traverse it ran just straight forward. It's not possible, let me tell you. So how do we get to the nice straight road that you'll see in a couple of minutes? Well, when the Quirinale was absorbed by the Roman territory, they began straightening it and cutting the mountain, shaping it to, you know, like cater it to the needs of the city. And this process lasted for a very, very long time, practically until the modern era, since the last modifications happened when Rome actually became the capital of modern Italy in 1870, so it's not very long ago. And this essentially means that reconstructing the true path of the Alta Semita is rather difficult, especially in its lower side. We'll get there. And even though we know most of it still follows its original path, or rather its Roman path, there are a few places where we really aren't sure how it ran. So, but the number one question everyone is asking themselves right now is, why did Genshin developers choose to include the Alta Semita in their game? And, well, to be completely honest, I'm not entirely sure myself, because there would have been better candidates that had much more symbolical meaning to the Romans, like the Via Triumphalis, for example, but they chose this one. And when I tried to look into it, what I noticed is that there are a few monuments that bordered the Alta Semita that are pretty interesting if you look at them from a Genshin perspective. So, firstly, just around the area where the Alta Semita entered the city walls, and you'll see that in a bit in the little video that I prepared for you, a large neighborhood once existed that came to be known as, be ready for it, ad tres fortunas, so near the three fortunes. And already you'll be going like, what? The reason is that the Romans built in this area not one, not two, but 3 different temples dedicated to the same deity, that is Fortuna. So, you know, like the same Fortuna as Genshin. And why did they do that? Because at the time these temples were built, Rome was actually under one of its biggest threats ever. That is Hannibal of Carthage, one of the most powerful generals of his time, and one that really came inches from actually conquering Rome in 216 BCE. And instead of trying to oppose fate, so Fortuna, as Remus tried to do in the game, the Romans were kind of big believers in a principle. You know, the saying, if you can't beat them, join them. Well, the Romans believed into something that was quite close. I'd rather call it, if you can't beat them, like, let them join you. So they built her temples, 1, 2, 3, and apparently she was pretty much convinced. So she, instead, Fortuna decided to protect them, and Hannibal was forced back, and Rome continued to prosper for a very long time after that. The second reason why I think that Genshin chose the Alta Semita for Remuria is that, in fact, a little more towards the southern half of the street, we can find another important temple, the one dedicated to Quirinus. Now, you probably never heard of this god, but the interesting thing is that he was god after whom the Quirinal was named. He was originally a god of the Sabini, the population that originally inhabited the Quirinal, and we have 2 different theories about what kind of god he was. So the first one is that he was a warrior god, armed with a spear that the Sabini called Quiris. So Quiris, Quirinus, Quirinal. The other one, which actually is a little more likely, it seems, is that he was actually more connected with politics and civil life and stuff like that. Why? Well, because the Romans very soon began calling themselves Quirites in some contexts, meaning those who participate in the covirie or curie. Curie is actually the Latin term, and covirie is what the term that we think the curie derived from, and it literally means an assembly of men. So basically, Quirites were citizens that could participate in the political life. And another important thing is that Romulus, so the founder of Rome, was very soon associated with Quirinus also. The Romans called him Romulus Quirinus. So we have a god of war, a god of politics, and literally a god king. If you ask my opinion, you just have to add music in the mix and you have something that gets very close to Remus. Okay, you know what? Enough talk. Now let's see the real thing. So here we are. This is where the Porta Collina stood, so the door in the city walls that was literally named after, it literally means the hill door, because it gave access to the hill. And here we're starting to actually walk along the Alta Semita in the area that I called a Tres Fortunas, so the 3 temples of Fortuna that I mentioned earlier. and here I wanted to show you the real name, the modern name of the road. So it's Via 20 Settembre. The 20th of September is actually the date in which Rome was added to the Kingdom of Italy in 1870. And a large part of this area was completely renovated, and that's why you see all those modern buildings. There's nothing Roman here, as you can see. And we're going down. I don't. Maybe you see the street is descending slightly. Here we are a little bit further. I had to try and cut this because it's a quite long road. And we're heading towards, maybe you can see it in the distance, the Quirinale Square. And actually this part of the city in ancient times was covered with private gardens. As you can see, we still have a garden here. And here you really realize how straight, how absolutely straight this road still is. And I assure you, in Roman times, in Imperial Roman times, it ran exactly the same. Here we reach the Quirinale, so the Quirinale Square. This is actually our president's residence. I wanted to show you because this square was added much later. And here we're going down these stairs here, probably still follow the path of the ancient Alta Semita, and we are slowly progressing towards the lower half of the hill. Here, actually a bit further, here is probably where the temple of Quirinus stood, but as I said, there's nearly nothing left. So, and here you can see the city center. Basically, this is the column of Trajan. That's the center of his forum, and so we reached the city center. So, but where did exactly the Alta Semita lead? Well, just to be clear, no, it didn't lead to the Clivus Capitolinus like Genshin made us believe, because it's on the opposite side, actually. And we aren't even sure either. We have no real data. But I found something really interesting here. A recent study published in 2022, that's recent for standards, very recent, and there has been an archaeologist that actually proposed a nice construction, and there are actually some major coincidences that will blow your mind. I'm telling you, you'll be mind blown. So follow me again, let's keep it going. So this archaeologist has actually identified this road that ran behind the Forum of Caesar, and here we have the Forum of Caesar. That's the temple that was at the center, and the road it should be exactly under us. So and it's not impossible that this little road actually was connected to the Alta Semita, and then it followed more or less this path to the Capitolium and to another city door that was called the Porta Fontinalis. And from there, it's highly plausible that there would have been like a ramp of stairs, and so the Romans did more or less what I am about to do. So, like, ascend that Capitolium through the stairs and get to the very heart and soul of the city that was, has been, and always will be. I don't know. Well, we're called the Eternal City, so yeah. So ultimately, maybe it led straight to the heart of Rome. But don't you find it strange? Porta Fontinalis. So the door was dedicated to a god Fons, who protected things like springs and fountains and any kind of water body, really. And if you ask me, it does go pretty well with the nation of Hydro, don't you think? And there's more. His main festival was actually called the Fontinalia, just like the festival that we had in Fontaine back in version 4.3. But the yummest bit is another one. Because the Fontinalia, the Roman Fontinalia, we don't know much about them, but we know when they were celebrated, when they took place. And this date was, yes, the 13th of October, just like Purina's birthday. Is this a mere coincidence? I'm not that sure. I rather think that Genshin has some really, really talented researchers that work for them. What do you think? It has been a rather long run, but I hope it was at least interesting to see. And if you have any kind of comments, of ideas, tell me if you like this new format of mine. I've never made a video before, so please bear with any kind of mistakes or anything. I'm not even a native English speaker, so I hope it was all clear. Just in case, just tell me. I will try and do better. And if you want more curiosities about Genshin, about even other games, I plan to do other games as well in the future. Just follow me. I promise I will have some really, really interesting bits. So thank you for your attention and see you soon on HioLab and elsewhere.